sir, it is.
Yes.
There I can start. So we are now going to discuss about the effective oral presentation skills. Now, at the beginning, I must tell you, these are not the part of the formal presentation, but just to assure, be confident. Don't be afraid of any sort of audience who is there in the audience. Because the most important part is when you are presenting, you have the stage to represent yourself. So even your country prime minister or president may be there in the audience, don't bother about it. Because you should be confident to present to the people. That's your confidence. You always think of, whenever you are going for any presentation opportunity in a formal audience, you are competent enough. That's why you have got that particular opportunity. But I must say that the others, whatever the knowledge the others have, what you are presenting, that's why the people are sitting for you. Then, as no presentation is perfect, I have already mentioned, don't worry about that. Because, going to the best possible perfection and then only I will present will only create your agony. Don't think about that. Try to do it as much possible as you do. Give your best effort, but no question of any worry. Always think about, just look back. Now, some of you in future may be the teachers like us. And think about some of the teachers' class you enjoyed. Please just try to analyze that in your future career. Because there are certain issues, how you know that's not the issue, how you can communicate with the people, that may be the most important issue that the students expect from the teachers. So my suggestion is, in any presentation, think of those teachers, try to analyze what are the special features they had, that's why you liked it. Then remember that both the content of your slides and the way of your talking, I'm telling only way of your talking, because in formal presentation, in a physical presence mode, you can have different, the other additional issues like how do you stand in front of the people, how do you greet them, this also becomes very important. But in the online presentation mode, the way of talking is the only communication option on the screen. So obviously these two are rather for your also needs different app. For making your before the way of practice a little bit. Everybody has certain limitations and certain positive when somebody wants to communicate with others. So don't try to highlight your limitations, rather be worried about your limitations. Think of that whatever the limitations I have, I feel I will try to improve. But you have certain positive aspects, I must say, everybody must have it. Then, be confident, but don't be arrogant. This is a very important issue. Just try to see yourself. You may be the person you like most can never be arrogant. He or she must be very polite, but at the same time, we always like the people who are very confident. So try to realize the difference between these two in presentation also. When I was also young as a student, I was very much rather getting tempted to use certain specific words which may attract the people. I know that word. But never think that this will create any good impression in audience. Because if you don't know that particular word specifically with a very, in-depth knowledge, rather in subsequent questions, you will feel fully. Think about particular word which you know very thoroughly, answer those. Any question, if it comes on those particular word, you can explain it properly. For good. It not only in presentation, in life, you should be honest. Don't try to just mix of something tricks into your presentation. Be very honest. Do maximum effort for a good presentation, and that will automatically lead to a good one, rather than trying to play some tricks in your presentation and your preparation. So with this input in the overall presentations, presentation will include rather your way of talking and the practice. You have to practice it because this is very much needed. In the selected presentation, whenever you are going to present at your, as a student, you must be very much, confident to, present and simultaneously answer questions. Questions, you must realize that there is nothing solution like, so-called in our student life, we get the answer books. There is no answer books to the, you don't know which question can come. And my simple approach or suggestion is that if you don't know something, don't try to confuse the audience. Tell it, I don't know, because you are a student presenter about it. Even I have found that very senior researcher in a conference, sometimes to the question of the audience, they honestly say, I don't know really. And there is nothing wrong to mention if you don't know anything. I mean, it's a particular thing, sorry. Because, I mean, in that case, people like it because he or she may be very, not him, he or she may particular question. So always do that particular thing through practice only. You can just present in front of your friends and then discuss it, whatever question you are facing, best. And then follow the time limit. It's very important for the, I mean, impression on the audience, because if you just use, you are available, say you have been given 10 minutes, 5-6 minutes, you are over, you have nothing more, it doesn't make a good impression. You are not prepared for the presentation at all. Not, but on the other hand, if somebody goes on presenting, even they will, I mean, he or she will be continuously requested a good situation for the presenter. Now I'm coming to the think about the content of the presentation. Now there is an, I mean, as a presentation structure, the suggestion is almost globally we follow this particular pattern. So initially you have to know your audience, because whenever you are presenting something for a, say, in a festive mood to your friends, that may not be the same whenever you are presenting to a professional audience or academic audience. So you must know your audience. Here it is quite easy to guess what audience you are going to expect. Your friends, some of your seniors who are in academic or in other professional field. So you can prepare yourself accordingly. Plan through plan, thought process, and literature review. Literature review, this terminology you might have already been aware, especially you are in the 4th year. If you are doing some project, I expect that you are already aware from your teachers. That means any research starts from what is the current existing knowledge, and that current existing knowledge review is very much important, because research, and there is a little bit difference between research and innovation. Not necessarily any new innovation will not be outcome of the research, but the methodical research is you have to make a literature review, finding out what are the gaps, that means where it ends, and then as if you have some incremental contribution to that particular knowledge. I'm telling incremental because it can be a big contribution also, but generally one particular article contribute to that field in most of the articles to an incremental knowledge increase. So literature review reflection must be there in your presentation. Then after the literature review, you are defining what you are actually going to do. Means, obviously, after the literature review, there are multiple options you can find out. I mean, what can be carried out, because no knowledge is completely finished. I mean, after publications of some papers. So obviously, the defining very clear objectives and scope of your work, what you have decided. You could have decided something else, but that's very important. That must be there in order of that. After literature review, the objective and scope of your work must be there. So obviously, once you have defined the objective, your results and discussions should be there. And in between, there should be some methodology that I will come to that particular part when subsequently I will discuss the in more detail and the little bit more analysis of that. And obviously, the audience must leave your presentation, or rather, you must stop your presentation with a definite message to the audience in summary. That's called the conclusion. So presentation plan can be something like that. Plan your structure. That means what you are presenting and what do you want to cover. Unless you have a definite objective or thought process in your mind, your entire presentation structure will be disjointed. That means from one slide to another slide, you may, I mean, the audience will feel that there is no interconnections. But basically, this is that any presentation should be, each slide should be connected to the earlier slide, and it must lead to the next slide. That means it should be obvious in the during presentation that all are very well connected. Think of your slides are different, but your presentation is one. So obviously that interlink between the subsequent slides is very much important. Obviously, to make a good presentation, you have to plan your content. And this is within your, control, because the day of actual formal presentation is 4th of February, as Professor Biswas has mentioned. So you can give your best effort to do that. But for the planning for the content, you have to distinctly think about in a class, when you go to learn a particular new subject topic, then what do you expect? That the teacher will give some initial introduction to that particular part. And then subsequently, you also expect that after giving the introduction, actually what is being done, maybe some calculations, maybe some physical examples, maybe some little bit sketch, the schematic, what we call. And then finally, the teacher should, at the end of the class, there should be some conclusive message that these are the today's lessons or learning, you have got it. And then obviously you have any queries, they are answered it. Here also, you plan your content accordingly so that you will have a beginning of your presentation. At the middle of the presentation, what content do you want to fill up? And then at the end, there must be some definite message that the audience can take from you. Any thought process, actually, the example I also give for this particular idea, if you look from, say, any plane is landing in the airport, there you'll find out if there is a forest somewhere around, it looks just a green shade. But if you enter into a forest, it looks like only trees. So how you will look into a particular system from far off or from very close, that makes the difference. And sometimes for the research proposition or idea, you need to look into that any system from two perspectives. The first perspective, from the wide view or broad view, is basically required to define your problem and your objective of the work. And that means how it fits into the actual need of the work. But the closer view is very much necessary, because whenever you want to explore something out of that, that's your research content, that must have to know that each tree you have to know in a forest. So obviously the presentation or your thought process, basically the thought process will lead to your presentation, must include both approach of looking into a problem or looking into a content. You must look into from long perspective or from short perspective. Short means I'm meaning the distance of the looking into the problem. Then literature is obviously, as we have already earlier mentioned, that what others have done in the area. It means that you have to make an exhaustive literature survey. And currently, I believe strongly you are all in IIST and you must have the access to the current international journals. That's very important, because in many of the institutes, I know still in India, not sufficient access to the journals are there. But I believe that in IIST currently, you have it. So identify where their work ends. In fact, some of the students confuse that literature review, if I go on mentioning some of the papers, names and the authors, etc., title of the particular article, that is good enough. But I can tell you, unless you cannot just connect those literatures you are showing, why they are important in your presentation, it doesn't make sufficient impression to the people. That means each of the literature, you may not to have explain or go on telling on 5 minutes for each of the literature. That's not possible. But the basic message of literature, you have to take up. And that's why I just want to mention in brief that during our student days, we thought that the review paper is the easiest option for writing a paper, because just taking 2 lines from each article, we can make a review paper. But now, being a little bit senior in the field, I know how difficult is the review paper, because each of those content has to understand thoroughly. The conceptual development over the years has to be understood. And that's why the review paper is generally written by senior experienced authors. So going through the literature and understanding it fully is very much important. You try to start doing these things if you have to have a research career in future. Identify where their work ends, that I've already mentioned. Then this will shape your objectives. Then how you can connect from the previous knowledge through the end of that particular knowledge, and then projecting that particular objective will, I can tell you very honestly, will create the initial interest to that particular presentation only. Okay, here is a very interesting objective based on the knowledge available. So in the professional presentation, I have found out that this sometimes presenting the objectives, connecting the literature, makes the most interesting initial curiosity of the people. Let us concentrate into his or her presentation. But otherwise, if it is not good, the people will think, okay, anyway, genuinely somebody has done something that is not enough. So concentrate into this particular part. So you must have to position your work with respect to this particular objective of your work properly. Then, according to the structure, the organizations of that particular presentation, divide your presentations, as I've mentioned repeatedly, that though your slides are different, but your connections of your slides must be very obvious. So follow a logical progression, maintain your focus throughout. Focus means once you, from the very literature review stage, you are just focusing something on your objective after the completion of the literature defining, and then methodology and conclusion must, accordingly fitting into that particular concept. Close the presentation with a summary. That's the concluding slide. Repetition of the key steps. That's a reminder or a logical conclusion. Objective and scope. This is, though it is, I mentioned 3 words: simple, concise, logical. Obviously, this is something you have to realize. The words doesn't always make all the sense. It has to be simple. Means what? One of the suggestions I can tell you that the students might have certain, rather idea that if you make your slides with a lot of pictures on the corner and etc., so that it becomes very, looking very nice. You are not going to make a presentation of some sort of so-called fine arts. You are going to make a presentation of the so-called scientific topic. So I personally believe that the, white background can also be better. It rather doesn't attract any part of the slides, but it makes the people concentrated more into the content of the slides. But obviously, if you have a better choice of the background, that's not a problem. Always everything has not to be plain white slides. You can do that. And then it should be concise. You should not go on telling something, in the big sentences, etc., that I'll come later on. And logical is quite expected. But honestly speaking, these are very easy to say. But how these 3 can be, actually implemented is a sort of experience and self-searching that what should be better option. This is an example actually given to you. Never makes this sort of, presentation where you are just writing a long, rather the sentences after sentences that you do in actually in article or your handwritten scribbles. All the points must be presented in a form of bullet points. If we find out that someone is just made a slide to remember everything written on the slides and go on reading from that particular slide, then it may be the worst possible presentation. You must have to make a preparation so that whatever written on the slides, the audience will look into your slide, but simultaneously they are not only looking into your slides, they're listening to you. Remember, unless your presence is quite realized through explaining those slides or points, then your presence become redundant. So if you just feel that I don't want to miss any point, so I will write everything on the slides, that may be the worst possible presentation. You have to give your effort to put it in short in the bullet form, and then you have to explain that so that your presence will be quite felt that it was very much needed. Results and discussion section. You must have mentioned that what you wish to share. After a particular work, how you present your work in the conclusion, that's very important. Because if you want to convey the message, something the audience is supposed to miss. Always you remember that the audience who will be present, they are not much aware about your work at all. Coincidentally, some of the interest topic may match, but the actual work, they are not at all aware of that. So how attractive you can make in the final conclusion, then that makes the difference in the presentation, impression of the presentation. Compare your results with, this is very much important in the field of research and knowledge. Nobody says that anybody has done the ultimate thing, and it does not need any comparison. Always we do it, some improvement, some limitations will also be there. So comparing with other results, you can rather better establish your contribution to the knowledge pool. Then what are the things this? That's all. So if you can highlight finding of your research will be much enhanced. How do the find your objectives? Important. Mentioned the flow of your presentation is literature review. Then you are defining your scope of work. Then describing the results, and finally conclusion. So obviously, your objective definition, that means that particular slide must be related to the final conclusion slide, that should match properly. The best way to show your results, it can be sometimes in the form of words, sometimes in the form of presentations. What is best possible, I can tell you, there is no perfect rule. You just give your effort, find out, depending on your type of work and objective, what should be your best possible way of your presenting your results. You can use graphs, as I mentioned, use pictures, use videos. But there is one, rather reminder. Sometimes students think adding up videos, if it's a short presentation, say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then sometimes if the video is of 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and that's a very trivial or rather not a particular specific message is transferred from there, then obviously it's not preferred. So use video if it is required. Say you have done certain experiments, there some few seconds video is very much required to explain that particular phenomena. Maybe in our field, there is a bubble expanding in a particular liquid, and then how the bubble is expanding and how it is, say, bursting or collapsing, that picture may sometimes give more message than the equations. That you can do. But use and misuse of video is either side very, sensitive. If you can use a proper video, that can lead to your quality of a presentation in an excellent degree. But on the other hand, just a long video with no specific message or very limited message gives you are trying to avoid or rather not using your time properly. So better that use your pictures, graphs, and videos. Either they can be very useful tools, very strong tools, or sometimes if you do not use it with your proper concentration, maybe they will mislead to your, or rather the audience will be misled by those things included in the presentation. So other points to consider: summary of your work. These are basically related to your conclusion part. Tie up various stages, that means continuity must be maintained. Acknowledge limitations. This is one aspect. Sometimes students confuse, but think about the situation. I don't know whether you have faced some of our great teachers, in my life at least. I have realized that, to face the questions of the students, I also still do, really in many cases, if I don't know, rather than answering in a wrong way, I should admit to the students even, I don't know currently, I can discuss with you later on. So in a similar way, if your work has got certain limitation, that's not your limitation. You are just in a presentation that can be excellently represented. These are the areas I'm not sure about it. That means any research question, if you just pose it in your presentation, not necessarily all the questions will be answered in your work. So if some areas are not still very clear to you, these may be not that particular good, you are confident about it. If you mention that, then to the audience, the message will go that you have given your best effort to explore all the possible options. Then relativity and the applicability, this issue, because engineering means obviously how these are related to each other and also how we can apply those things. Say, of the presentation, I assume that will be on engineering science content. Engineering science means a little bit different from the basic science, because basic science fundamentals just because of fundamentals only. But engineering science means always there is a definite objective of that learning. But any technology is based on certain science. The objective of fulfilling some social context. So the applicability, that means combining science with engineering science, technology component. Finally, you have to mention how it can be useful to the society. That's give a good impression. Then in the conclusion slide, it must be precise. Only include that you want to. In conclusions, I personally feel that bullet points, some specific words that it carries the message, bold or different color. Sometimes that makes a sense, because any slide means this slide maybe some few minutes or so, something like that, or rather 1 minute I have covered it. For the people of your important aspects. Never repeat any point, because if subsequently you find out that that's not good. And must be confident in your expressions. Then again, I am reminding, you must be confident but not arrogant. Be very careful about it. And then some of the intangibles, these are means it should not be excessive. It should not be very shy also. Your posture, you must be very, to the audience, You must be respectful to them, but it doesn't mean always you just keep your heads down. No, the people want to see your face, not your, just your head down to the ground. Enthusiasm is something that's a reflection of your presentation. You have to be very much enthusiastic, and your energy and passion, these things actually through the presentation the people feel. But unfortunately, I know that in presentation, these things becomes more important, but in online presentation, you have little scope for that, because your slide will occupy most of the, visibility will be through your slides, and how you talk. That's your voice will be more important rather than your physical gestures. Then, as seniors, our only advice is go on for practice, practice, and practice. There is no substitute to that. At the beginning, you have to do it. And I must say that all the people, even the senior most person, they must admit that still they are learning something from the feedback from the audience or questions from the audience, and they can learn some new message for how the presentation should be. So there is no end to that. And finally, I must acknowledge Professor Nihar Biswas, because he has actually initiated this particular concept, how should be presentation can be made. And then Ashirbani has also contributed how it can be modified properly for better message. I don't know whether this is carrying actually better message or not. And I'm trying to present the concept that developed by three of us. And finally, obviously, you are all our junior students. Our beloved alma mater. All our best wishes for all of you. Please share your thoughts. If you have any queries, we will be very happy to answer.